Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have all the SJ types. So the SJ temperament is called the Guardian by Keirsey and the Stabilizer in Linda Barron's system. What they're known for is being the caretakers of the world. So a few of the notable characteristics of the SJ temperament are accountability, predictability, and responsibility. They all have introverted sensing, so they all look to past experience as a reference point for current and future action. They also are very good at creating security and stability. They're known for being able to put the right people in the right place, in the right quality, in the right time, and in the right amounts. And so those are a few traits that generally SJs share. And so let's get the show on the road. So Samuel, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Hi everyone, I'm Samuel. I am the ISTJ, and in terms of Enneagram, I am Type 1, Wing 9.
Nice. And Amy?
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm an ESTJ. I am likely Enneagram 1, and I am married to an INFP.
Awesome. And Anaa?
Well, my name is Anaa. I'm an ESFJ, and I'm from Mexico.
Excellent. And Jane?
My name is Jane. I'm an ISFJ, and I'm an Enneagram 6. I think that I lean a little more into my 7 wing than my 5, but I think they're pretty balanced. So hello.
Hello, hello. And hi, my name's Joyce. I'm a certified MBTI practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations, and I type and coach people. So SJs, what qualities do you believe this temperament likely shares? Just some hypotheses or observations?
I think we share a desire for group unity. Like we want the people around us to feel like we're all pulling on the same team. I think we like stability in the sense of we're all pulling together, like we're getting things done. It doesn't have to be stability as in, not that things aren't chaotic. Things can be chaotic at times, but we want it be more planned chaos or allowed chaos as opposed to unexpected chaos going on, or I like to call it slightly organized chaos. I planned, this is the time for chaos. Here's your amount of chaos. Here's your space. When it's done, it's done. We're getting back to the rest of life.
You'll also hear the NJs say that they don't like unplanned chaos, or they like to plan for chaos. So it seems like a general SI and NI heavy trait. People who don't like unplanned chaos. Great observation. Anyone else?
I think that we can add tendency for precision, that the temperament of getting things done is also meant to get all the steps that we are getting to get things working and interact with other people to be well done. Every single step.
Yeah, there's a procedural quality, especially maybe to the STJs, because that TE is also accompanied with it. So being able to kind of understand the sequence to get things done and like the procedure that's typically done to do things and how to improve on that if it's not as great. SI is all about taking a template or a recipe for something. And so learning to recreate the good parts of that recipe, and if there's maybe room for improvement, if it's like a healthy SI user, they might tweak the recipe a little bit with their extroverted intuition to do it in a slightly better way, but it's still like looking at a recipe or a template initially. And so, Anaa?
Well, I was thinking about what you said at the beginning about caretaking. I think that's something that, I don't know if it happens with the other ESTJ, but in my case, at least, I can say that I'm always trying to take care of other people, my family, my friends. I try not to be like too, like, I don't know what the word will be, but I try to do it in a subtle way. And I think I do it very naturally. So it comes very natural to me to do it, even if I don't want to, or I don't want to come across as very overbearing. sometimes, well, I think that's a very characteristic trait. And I don't know if you guys share that as well. Like,
Oh,
I don't
yes.
know.
I think that we share a trait of being usually pretty dutiful to, I guess, like the organizations we're in and just like the people that we care about and we're close to. Like, we're pretty loyal and we like to, uphold, I guess, just those groups and contribute what we can. Keep them, I don't know, keep them together and keep them going nicely.
That's amazing. I was wondering, how do you all caretake? So what is your form of caretaking?
Particularly, I try to listen to my friends and like try to just be there, honestly, not so much giving advice. I mean, if they ask me, I will give my honest opinion, but I just try to that they know that I'm there. And I think that's something about that is related with what you said at the beginning. We just try to be present and like just that they know that we're there, like in a positive light. Like, it doesn't matter what is happening in their lives, I'm gonna be there, and like they can trust me and I'm gonna listen to them. And like, I don't know, I think that's we're very loyal, like we're always there. So that's something that I think is a characteristic of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
loyalty and consistency. I was wondering, oh yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say I caretake, but I can't help the giving advice part. Like that, like if I see it's going wrong, I'm going to tell you how to get it right. Simply because I can't stand the fact that you look frustrated because it's not going right. Like that's what it, like which I usually this is how I usually could tell if I've got SFJ female friends, is because they usually come to me and go, "You keep telling me I'm doing it wrong," and then I have to stop them and tell them, "No. I'm telling you from a place of love. I don't want you frustrated anymore." And when they hear that conversation, they're like, "Oh, you didn't mean it from like a backstabbing place," and I'm like, "No, I mean it from a very blunt place, a very factual. You're driving me crazy because you look sad because you're not getting it done right place." And then I would say my caretaking also tends to go into that process mode of procedural, even more of if something's not going right and you don't know why it's going wrong, I'm going to sit here and try and figure out what it is and what steps we need to take to get it going right. And then I'm probably going to, because not only am I one, I'm also a teacher by inclination, I'm probably going to go back and I'm going to be going through and teaching you and then teaching anybody else involved in this process to get everybody up to speed. Because I think that's another thing that SJ share is a tendency. We want to get everybody up to par. Like we want to make the jobs or the procedure easy enough everybody can do it. Like, or a lot of procedures, we want to make it
Simple,
as easy as possible for as many people as possible to do it. We don't mind super specialized tasks that only some people can do. We know those things exist, but we really love being able to make it easy enough for everybody to do too.
There's this quality of accessibility, and so you're taking this template and you're trying to make it more accessible to the group, because there's a group service quality to the SJs. That's really cool.
We don't want to get stuck doing it all the time. So we're going to make it easy enough for you to do too.
Yeah, so you're not the only one doing the task. That's smart. Yeah, good efficient use of your time. And so TE love through TE solutions.
Hey, Nat.
Hey, Nat. Yeah.
The other thing I think we also do is if we don't think you can get it done and it's in our power to get it done for you, you'll probably find us doing that too. If the solution is just you need a sandwich, I know you could make one, but if you really can't right now, I'll probably just go make you the sandwich, show up with the plate of cookies, got whatever that task was done and out of the way, if it's a reasonable request.
Cool. I was wondering, in terms of practical support, do you ever remember, like, I don't know, the specific blanket that your certain child likes, or the specific foods that you know that a certain person likes, or like ways to love them practically through that? And if so, do you have any examples too?
I have a tendency
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
remember like food preferences, hobby preferences of different people, the type and makeup of their extended and immediate family, you know, details of where they're from, you know, anything like that. I try to log that kind of different information. And in fact, I was kicking myself the other day because my niece was over and she's celiac. And I'd been told by my sister when she first started that she liked to toast her bread before having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that tasted better with the kind of bread she could eat. Well, so I went and did it. And then she told me, "Oh, Aunt Amy, I don't like it toasted anymore." And I kicked myself because I'm like, "Oh, I think she told me that last time." But it was a little hard for me to readjust because I had already implanted the one pattern in my brain. And now I was trying to change it back to, okay, no. She doesn't want it toasted. She just wants it regular now. But so sometimes changing those, when we've created those paths that we think are going to help people, and then we find out that's not the right path, I think sometimes that's can be a little hard for us to readjust those paths when people say we're not flexible. Now, we probably will adjust those paths because now after the second time of her telling me this, I'm probably really going to remember next time that she doesn't want it toasted anymore. But so we can be really flexible. I think sometimes just turning the ship fast doesn't always happen. Especially if we already got a path laid out.
Cool. And so, Natalie, what are some thoughts you have on the SJ temperament? In what ways does your SJ-ness show up in your life? So maybe examples or things that you consider very SJ about yourself.
So I guess like what you were just talking about, like being able to remember people's preferences and finding details like that really important. They just kind of stick in my head, I guess. Also like having pretty solid routines and things that I like and things that I don't like. And yeah, I guess like being very routine oriented, being pretty good with practical things, although sometimes I don't know how practical I am. I'll probably think of other things in a minute, but that's all I have for now.
Nicely said. When the word routines is mentioned, what type of routines do you all have? Do you have like non-traditional routines, traditional routines? Do you not have routines? What is your relationship with routines?
I'm more successful when I have routines in getting things done. You know, like if there's a routine associated with it, I'm far more likely to actually be successful at getting it done than when I don't have a routine. Like if I'm not tired and I come to bed, it's a lot easier for me to do like all the toothbrushing and everything else I should do before I go to bed. If I am, sick and tired or accidentally fell asleep downstairs, then coming upstairs and trying to remember to do that stuff is a whole lot harder. And so, and for us, I think definitely that one of the ways people have talked about making improvements in yourself, the option is to add a routine to a current routine to learn to do something new. I think that works really, really well for SJs. If you can add that new thing to a routine you're already doing, you are so much more likely as a SJ to actually get that new routine in place, lock it in to the point where then you can even break those two things apart and you'll still get both of them done. Because you're so used to having that piece of the part, getting those pieces done individually.
That's true. Yeah. Instead of giving an SJ like a completely new thing altogether, especially for NE last types, maybe being able to reintroduce it within something they already know might be easier than just giving them the new thing without anything to anchor themselves in. So that's a good tip.
And particularly with learning, I find that to be the case. I can't learn new information without linking it back to something I know already. Or in particularly, I can do intuitive conversations really well. I've been married to INFP for 15 years. So I can really do most intuitive conversations. But if they forget to give me a concrete example, I still get lost. Like I need at least one. Like I can do I can make up all the rest of the examples, but I need one. If you can't give me one, I sit there and go, I'm not quite, it takes me like 5 times longer to understand what in the world you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree to what Amy said. My best friend was an INFP, which I think you say your husband is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always used to ask her, like, but what do you mean? Can you give me an example? Or like, because I didn't understand. I could understand like the general idea, but it was very hard to me, like to put it like, I needed something like, okay, tell me just one little detail and I'll get it. And, and then you can continue with the story. And I think also with routines, something that works for me is to also include it in another routine that I have, but also for me to stay motivated, I try to think how that if I do that, how that's going to help to people around me. Like what's the benefit of, okay, if I do this, how is this going to impact positively in my family or in my context? I don't know. So that's something that really helps me with trying to incorporate something new. I don't know if that happens to you guys, like trying to think about all the positives that it will bring for everybody. So
Yeah, I think that when we try to get things to actions necessary to get a lot of, it's necessary more information just to think about it. So we'll try to gather all the information necessary to actually do the thing. So it requires more than just the general idea, because there are a lot of, as you said, a lot of solutions, but you need to choose one, and which one is the best, and how can I implement the best solution. That's what I believe is harder to deal with new things, because every simple new thing requires a lot of information that's attached to it.
Yeah, because that new thing might just be chaos for no reason, because you have to figure out what does this add to the thing that you're doing. If you're going to add a new thing into it, does it actually add any value, or is it just new for the sake of new? I was wondering if we could go a little bit more into the caretaking aspect of the SJ temperament. Do you all have examples of caretaking? So I know that Amy shared her example of the toast. So I'm wondering about everyone's lives. The reason why I'm so cognizant of asking people for examples is because I know that sensing types need examples. And so I try to provide more just because it's to cover a perspective in the audience.
Great. Well, I would add that for me, usually I tend to think about if there's something that's necessary to be done, how can I do my part? And if someone else needs like some help, I'll help him. For example, I have a friend that she was trying to help her father to learn English, to improve how he could speak English better. And she asked me how she could think about the order of the content that she could teach and exercise with her father. So I'll took the care of look at each specific part is really necessary or the hardest parts of English and make sure that she will follow it and she will not have the trouble to forget about something very important or to get the right thing in the wrong order to study and to learn English.
Yeah, because SJs understand the most effective sequence of things, they know when the right thing is going to the right place or if the right thing is going to the wrong place through SI experience backlog. And so any other examples of caretaking? Natalie, Jane?
So I can really only think of like little ones, but I guess one way that I caretake is I like to check in with people a lot, like just my friends and everyone that I care about, because I want them to know that I'm here for them, and like I just want to make sure that if there's anything I could do to help, that I'm aware of that, and it's just nice to know someone's in your corner. And I guess even just on another note, like very little practical things. Like if I'm going somewhere with someone, then there are times when I find myself being like, I don't know, like I'll ask like, okay, like, are you sure you don't want to use the bathroom here? Or like, do you have snacks? Like I could bring snacks. Or like, are you sure you don't want to bring a jacket? Because I checked the weather and it's gonna be a little chilly. Like just little things like that. Because I don't know, I've realized some people really need it.
Oh, that's very mumbly of you. Love it.
I have an example too. So I supervise a group of student workers at the university library that I work at. And during COVID, they can have like 15-minute breaks every 4 hours that they work. And during COVID, they kind of stopped taking their breaks because they don't. It was just so dead in the library and there was no reason to. And so as we were kind of going back, I make a point to always ask them if they want their break, because that's something that my supervisors did for me in the past. And I felt like they were uncomfortable asking. Like there were times that they wanted to, but they maybe didn't feel like that was the norm or that was accepted anymore. And so I guess I just like to make sure that everybody's taken care of, you know, that you have food, that you're not uncomfortable while you're at work, and I guess making people feel comfortable in general and comfortable asking for the things that they need practically is important to me.
Yay.
Like my favorite thing to bring to a potluck or something like that is I want to bring the plates and the utensils and the cups, because there will be food. But if we don't have those, it's just going to, you know, like everything's going to be horrible. Or like this week we are having a lot of evening meetings. And so I was talking to a friend of ours. He's a grad student. He and his wife have been recently married, but I'm like, well, I'm bringing church to the event. Yeah, bringing dinner to the event, you know, every night. Do you need me to bring you dinner so you can actually come? Because otherwise you might be too busy to make it, you know, if I didn't bring dinner for you. So he said, you know, well, that's kind. He goes, well, I'll let you know. I got to look at my schedule and stuff like that. And I'll let my wife know, because she doesn't get in till later. And I was like, okay, like it's not hard for me to bring extra, you know. If I'm bringing some anyways, I can always bring extra. Or like when I'm out shopping, I know what a good deal looks like. I know what, you know, if there's something on somebody else's wish list or there's something that they're looking for, it's really easy to be like keep track of that. It's like, oh wait, that thing's on sale and I may not buy it and gift it to you, but I'll at least let you know it was here, or I'll pick it up while it's here and you can pay me back then at the killer sale of a price or whatever. You know, tracking that kind of stuff is interesting. I find one of the other things I can track is like I track price points of food. Like, so I know the difference between a fake sale that's going to get you into the store and a real sale on it. And a lot of people, like, they're looking at you going, oh, well, it's on sale this week. I'm like looking at them going, yeah, $3 a pound for butter is not a sale. That's the fake sale. That's not the real sale. Okay. $2 or less. That's the real sale. Okay. At least in my area, you know, like, and I find like not everybody tracks things like that either. And I think it's because I'm tracking the past to predict the future, where other people are like, oh, in the moment, they're like, oh, this is it.
Yeah, and your TE is metricizing the numbers too. So that's double whammy, your TESI magic power. And so Anna, do you have any examples of caretaking like that?
Well, I always ask my friends if they have eaten when they arrive home to my house, and if they say no, I try to give them food. Also, I work. Well, I don't work. I don't like the word work, but I am in a theater company. So sometimes we go to different neighborhoods and like we take a place with the kids in there, and I'm in charge of the production this past play. So I need to make sure that everybody's ready, that we have the objects, that we have that the actors are ready, they have the wardrobe and everything. So I'm the one making the list, and like I always ask them before we leave the house, and I ask them, "Do you want to check the list of the objects before we go?" And they say sure, and then we do that. We go like we go to the to-do list, and like we make sure that we have everything ready, and the other day, one of them told me like that was very helpful, because they are like just in the present, like thinking about that specific moment, and maybe they don't realize that they are forgetting something. So it was very nice to know that I'm helping them with that, instead of just being annoying. Because I was like, I don't want to sound annoying. I don't want to be like pushing you, or like, like trying things. But I have found that people like it, that they enjoy, like, having someone who can who has track of everything, and like is good for that. And that's, I think, a natural skill that we have. So that's the example that I can think.
That's amazing. Any other SJ qualities y'all want to bring up?
I would just add that from my perspective, we care a lot of those things to make sure that things are working and our relationships are in a good state, because when everything is solved, then we can start to do new things. So we can relax and put our minds to work on other projects. Not just because the real things are the only things that matter, but because when they're solved, we're free to do whatever we want. That's what I tend to believe how things are.
Yeah, when the fundamental things are taken care of, you don't have to worry about the necessities, and then you can be free, almost. Like,
I have an example. So, like, I've noticed when I'm in church and I'm trying to listen, I can't listen if my brain starts listing off things I need to do that I haven't written down, like shopping lists or whatever stuff. So I've just learned it's easier and faster just to start writing the shopping list on another piece of paper while I'm listening, get it written. Because once I get it written, then I can like turn that part of my brain off and I can go back to listening. Like I can't do it. Like I can't sit there and listen the way I want to if I've got this stuff running in the background. So like if I write it down, then I can like kind of get it off my plate into, a saved zone for later of, okay, I know I can get to this later now because it got written down and I won't forget. Like, so I do think it's very true for us, for where if we feel like the fundamentals aren't done, it's very hard to relax. It's very hard to do other things if you feel that happening.
fascinating stuff. And so I'm wondering, if someone knows they're an SJ, but they don't know which SJ they are, what are some ways you would differentiate these 4 types?
If you're loud and bossy, you're probably me. You could be also an ESFJ, but by and large, if you are comfortable taking control of a situation that's out of control, and you are, and also in particular, if you react before you process the event. So you're just going to do it first, and then afterwards you're going to evaluate how well you did it. You're an ESJ. If you are going to sit there and plan how you're going to do it first, and then go do it, you're an ISJ. And that's a way to break down those 2 differences. And then for me, I think T and FE has to do with, I think the difference is how you react to emotions around you. I'm going to feel sorry. I'm going to understand you have emotions and stuff like that. And I can even respond emotionally to your emotions. But they're not something that I ever feel inherently has to control me in the process. Now I'm going to respond to your emotions because there's something I need to deal with. And sometimes I'm going to respond like, why are you giving me these emotions? We didn't need them right now. It's like, we've got things to do. Why are your emotions getting in the way? Mommy? Hold on just a second. Sorry. Maybe I should have left the mic on. That might have been really a helpful illustration. My daughter came in and was going to ask you something, but I'm like, no, go talk to your dad. She keeps talking. No, go talk to your dad. Right? And I always think of emotions as being something that are a variable that I have to deal with, but not not the impulse that I have to react to. I don't have to react to the emotional state of what's going on around me. I'm going to put it into my equation of all the things I'm using, but I'm not going to make it yeah, you can tell another child walked in, can't you? Fortunately, that was smart and didn't talk. I can put those emotions into my equation as I'm trying to figure out my solution. But they don't have to be the driving force as to why I'm finding the answer to them for what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, so it depends on how much you weigh emotional material or emotional criteria. So with an ESTJ, they're going to factor into the equation, yes, but it's only a part of the equation. It's not the driving force. Whereas, especially with the ESFJ type, it's going to be one of the driving criteria to making a choice, other people's feelings, how it will affect connection and connectivity of the people around you, and also the ISFJ as well, to some extent. So that's another way to differentiate them. How much weight do they put on emotional data? I know people think that, oh, feeling doesn't have to do with emotions, but from the people that I've interviewed, it does. So feeling types do tend to place more weight on feelings, who's going to be hurt, who's going to be harmed emotionally by a choice. And that's going to be the driving factor to how they're going to think about a situation. So that's how you can generally tell an FJ type, or just a F type in general too.
I think that Amy explained very well the difference between like extroversion and introversion, because the introverted ones will really try to take the time before they act, even though that's not necessarily the best path. This is our tendency. In terms of the difference between the thinking and feeling, we probably will feel that for our part of the thinkers, will not feel that we are not necessarily give you information about how we want the relationship to develop. So I'm talking to you about the problems, about the things that are going into the conversation, but not necessarily how I want to make it feel or how I want to express what I'm feeling. Usually, we tend to see it more a background process. If there's a possibility, a situation in which it's really relevant and maybe will show up, but generally not for the STJs.
That's a good point, Samuel. So with ISTJs and INTJs, they're actually, a lot of them are private about their feelings. And so like if they're actually feeling something about a situation, you may not always be able to tell. Their innermost feelings are private. So it might be hard to show their true feelings about something. That's how you can tell someone might be an ISTJ. How much do they show of how they actually feel about a situation? Truly being just open heart on sleeve, emotional vulnerability. There are some emotions that ISTJs will share. Some of them, like a subsection of them, might show frustration when things aren't working well. But beyond that, like a vulnerable emotion, like showing you their heart on their sleeve, is not something a lot of ISTJs do. That might be a sign that you lean more on the ISTJ side, reserved about emotional expression, unless you see like a point to actually share it.
Usually the tendency is to see that if I need the help of other people, I feel that I'm weak. That's the feeling that I have, even though it's not necessarily the right implication. But I would like to say that in terms of emotions, anger usually spreads up very easily with thinkers. If the thinker is really angry, is more likely to notice than happy or sad or other emotions.
Unless you have a baseline of being happy. So there are thinkers who have a baseline of being a happy personality. That's mine. So you'll see happiness on me a lot, but I'm also very much of an open book version. But I think that's also being part of being an EJ for me, is that open book. I think if I'm an introverted version, you wouldn't see that open book quality play across not just emotions, but facts and everything else about me either. I think you'd be very hard pressed to find someone who describes themselves as an open book and being an introvert, to be honest.
Yeah, so extroverts in general, this is a wide sweeping generalization, but they, on a whole, they tend to be more likely to call themselves an open book than an introvert would be. As well, what Amy mentioned about happiness and how she does show happiness, that is also a small clue that someone might be an extrovert in general. So, extroverts as a whole, there are scientific studies done on this. They're actually more optimistic and happy. And so, if someone has a baseline level of really strong happiness and they express it, it actually is a sign of extroversion. It's not the only sign. You can have happy introverts too. But do you know what I'm saying? There's a vibe to extroverts. They have this like happy vibe. You look at Anaa, you look at Amy, they feel happy. They feel very energetic. And that's also a sign someone might be an EJ by the energy they emit. Because even on this panel, you can feel that the introverts on a whole are a little more reserved, and the extroverts actually are a little more bold with expression. This doesn't apply for everyone. There's going to be outliers and exceptions, 100%. But if you were to broad sweep generalize it, that's still helpful in a lot of cases to know that.
And broad sweep it across like the whole time of day, like the whole time they're awake. Like I'm happy and alert like this all the time I'm awake, where there are some introverts who are only happy and alert like this at certain times of the day. And the other times of the day, they're doing the quiet face. And like my son is an introvert, and there are times he's very animated and stuff like that. And people are like, oh yeah, no, he's an introvert. I'm like, yeah, you just don't usually see him when he's in that introvert stage. You just always catch him when he's in his animated extrovert stage.
I think I agree to what Amy said, because the other day I'm a teacher, so I work with middle school students, and I was just serious because I was very, very tired. I had like a rough week, and some of them asked me if I was mad, and I was, no, I'm just not being so bubbly like I always am. And even because I work at 7 a.m. and I'm that person who's always happy. Since I wake up, I'm like, hello, good morning to everyone. And like, so if I'm just a little bit serious, they get scared or they think that it's something wrong with me. And I'm like, no, I'm just tired, guys. I'm okay, I promise. And I think it's something like what you say, Joyce, like people, it's like the energy also, like more like out there energy, if you could say.
I definitely agree, Anna. Really well said. And so, yeah, Amy mentioned a good point too about how you have to measure energy across their whole life. It's not just their energy at a specific moment, because extroverts on a whole are more energetic and consistently energetic, actually, throughout the day and throughout the weeks and throughout their whole life. So if you measure them, you're going to see a higher level of bubbliness in general, unless there's something affecting that. Whereas like introverts, I notice they are bubbly too, but sometimes it's a face they put up. And it's more intentional during social situations or during times they interact with people or in the environment. But it's almost like if you were measure an introvert across the lifetime of their bubbliness and to see them how they're actually like what is their true baseline, it's going to be a little less bubbly than extroverts on a whole. And so it's a generalization, but I see it across all the people I interview. So I think that it makes sense. And so I'm wondering, ISFJs, how would we spot you out of the SJ types?
I feel like it's actually kind of hard to say because I feel like I'm a very like in the background kind of person, like behind the scenes. I'm pretty caring, but I'm also very like quiet about it. When I first started hanging out with my group of friends in college, one of them told me after a while, she was like, I didn't actually really notice you there at first. Like it wasn't like I don't have a noticeable presence, but she was like, after a while, I really couldn't imagine our group without you. Like there's just something kind of maybe a little bit hard to define about whatever my presence gives. Like I kind of feel like in any group that I'm in, I'm pretty like stabilizing. Like I usually don't have a lot of conflicts with people. I'm also pretty conflict avoidant, which is not a great thing sometimes when there is an issue. But maybe just like, I guess I add a certain warmth, but I'm not sure how to describe it really. Maybe like, I don't know, I guess the way I pick out other ISFJs is like I look for somebody who's kind of practical, but maybe not the most outspoken person in a group. Yeah, I don't know, like quiet, practical, I guess. Maybe like emotionally sensitive, but maybe it's not always apparent at first. Like I think sometimes I'm good at hiding my emotions and other times I really can't. Like even though I am an introvert, I feel like I'm not very good at masking certain emotions. And a lot of people like who know me well like know what I'm feeling, even if I try to hide it. So I wish I had better things to say than that, but yeah, I guess that's it.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Natalie. There's a behind the scenes quality to ISFJs. Yeah. Jane?
Yeah, I really agree with everything you just said, Natalie. And I really like what everyone was saying just about the whole energy thing. I guess that's generally about like extroverts and introverts, but I feel like IJs, especially ISFJs, like we tend to have it's like calming and chill and warm at the same time energy. I don't know, it's just kind of like usually just like I don't know, it's like subtle sunshine. I don't know. I feel like I maybe I start to suspect other people are also ISFJs when, like myself, they are kind of more in the background. But whenever like I do talk to them, I mean, maybe they don't say much, especially if I don't know them well, then they generally tend to keep it kind of like surface level too. But they're usually like very sweet and very nice. And I don't know, like they seem like on top of things, or I could tell they're like consistently just contributing or kind of like taking care of the small things for maintenance that other people aren't. And just another thing about the energy, which I think is funny, like I remember once I was sitting like around a campfire with some coworkers, and one of my coworkers, like she was in between me and an ISTJ. And she was like, guys, someone with crackhead energy, please come over. These two have very calming energy. I need to be more balanced. I need to be like more complimented. Yeah, I don't know. And maybe also for ISFJs, someone who like it as you see them in more context, or get to know them better, they start to surprise you with like their humor. Like I don't know, like maybe you'll find they're surprisingly witty, or they'll say some kind of like just kind of quirky thing, and it's like, oh, like that person's pretty cool. So I don't know, there's just kind of like a mishmash of things.
I would
I
say
totally
for
agree with the humor thing, Jane. That's like something that I feel like I can do crackhead energy in like short bursts, especially if I stay up too late. My college friends called it my 11 o'clock personality. And then like, I don't know, like when I get to know somebody well, those things definitely come out. My ENTP friend told me that she thinks I'm more witty than she is. Which is funny to me because people associate NE with being witty. And what else was I going to say about that? Yeah, like people on my YouTube channel will comment sometimes. They'll be like, you're an INFP because you have any wittiness. And I'm like, that's not really what makes an INFP, but It's funny. It's kind of like flattering to hear that a little bit.
ISFJs are like the warm and inviting, quiet people, and ISTJs are like the cool and collected, quiet people. You know, and they're both equally competent at getting stuff done. You can just kind of tell off their vibes which direction they kind of tend to go towards. As for which kind of tasks, if you need somebody cool and collected to get it done, you're probably ISTJ first. If you need something like gently warm and inviting done, you're probably heading over to the ISFJ first.
I'll add that we are probably very alike in terms of being calm and relaxed types, but I believe that ISFJs are the ones that give more the feeling of peace. That's not that peace about ISTJs, but about ISFJs, I really feel like peace about them.
SFJs feel like a hug. It feels like a hug to be around them.
They're always the last ones to answer the question.
They're so
like every question you've asked, it's always me first, and then it's either Anaa or Samuel goes second, depending on how comfortable they are with the topic. Like if Samuel already knows an answer, he goes first, but if he's not sure of his answer, then Anaa jumps in. And then after that, after the other one goes, then we get around to the ISFJs. But I've noticed that through every question you've asked so far, that's how we've circled through the panel.
Ooh, that's another sign of ISFJ. I know.
Oh, and the tracking is SI, because all of them have probably already noticed this in that's how the rotation's going. But since I'm the ESTJ, I'm going to be the first one to say it.
Ooh, yeah. So that's a clue too. Who is first to answer? Extroverts in general are going to be more initiating with answering, especially with the STJ bent. Amy is going to probably, or the ESTJ bent, Amy is going to answer first, most likely. And then it seems like ISFJs typically go last in terms of answering order. I know this is anecdotal, so it doesn't apply for everyone, of course. Everything in every show is anecdotal, so don't worship any example as the only possibility. There's always exceptions, there's always outliers, but you can still draw trends. Good pointing that out, Amy. And so, Anaa, I'm wondering, how would people be able to tell an ESFJ from this group?
I think that if you are more worried about other people's feelings, and I think a misconception that people have is that we are not logical, but I think we are. I think we can make very logical decisions. It just depends which solution we take or which decision we take in other people's feelings. If I know that solution might be the best, but it's going to impact most of people negatively, I probably will look for another solution that fits better for everyone to be just in harmony. Not in harmony, but everybody feels good about the result. And if it's not that, and if that is not possible, I probably will say it anyway, but I will try to do it in a very subtle way and make sure that everybody's taken care of, and I'm considering everybody's opinion and feelings. So I think that's a major way that you can I think most of my decisions are based on other people's emotions, but I don't know how to explain it. I think that's it.
I think
I don't do everything for everyone, but it's something very important to me.
Yeah. I had to
Sorry,
learn
what did you
subtlety.
say?
I had to learn subtlety. That was not my first inclination with doing things. I had to learn subtlety. I think you have to learn when to put the subtlety aside and just say, no, this is the right thing. Don't care what the emotions are going on. We're going to do it anyways. And so depending on which one you have to learn can be a good indicator of which type you are. Because if you're an older adult and you're coming into MBTI and you're going, wait, I do both of those. Stop, think back. And if you could track it back far enough, that's also a good sign you're SJ. Track it back far enough to which one did you have to learn? Did you have to learn to be subtle? Did you have to learn to value people's feelings more to get good results? Or was it you had to learn to push through people's emotional responses, and you had to learn that this is just the right, this is just what has to be done, we're going to push through, then you're probably more of an ESFJ. And there's a lot of strength to ESFJs, because don't ever assume because somebody is being very forceful about their opinion that it's always the ESTJ. Because I've met a lot of ESFJs who are older who can really ringlead and charge and bandwagon to a great degree of pushing their agenda forward across the whole group, and getting things done. They're really good at it. In fact, they're far better at bandwagoning than I am. Like, I try to encourage people to come along with it, but honestly, ESFJs run circles around me as far as like pulling people on board with like particularly other feelers. Like, they know how to push all those buttons to get all the feelers on board, that I have a harder time. Like, I can run around all the thinkers and be like, hey, look, this was more efficient, this was more accurate, and all the thinkers are like, yay, and all the feelers are looking at me like, what? And so I've had to learn that other side of the like equation of like, oh wait, yeah, try the emotional appeal on that person. Okay, let me think. Okay, that's not my first inclination.
Yeah, but as you said, it's something that you have to learn, and I had to learn to be more assertive and like to, okay, this is how everybody's feeling, but this has to be done, so I'm going to just try to convince everyone to that this is the best solution for everyone, and like listening to them, but not let that just impact every decision that I make. So I completely agree to what you said.
Yeah, with ESFJs, you'll see them worrying a little more about how people will feel or their preferences or their opinions a little more. You'll see this in ESFJ opinion gathering too. So ESFJs will go like, how will Bob feel about my decision? Or how will Matt feel about my decision? How will Sally react? So before they do something, they want to know how it's going to impact group well-being. And they want to consider that as much as they possibly can before embarking on a decision. So it's almost like they want a decision that can meet as many needs as possible. That's a sign of an ESFJ. They're still going to have that initiatingness of an extroverted type. However, they're going to be so like very feeling oriented, as in they're going to get a consensus of feelings and to see what decision would meet as many feeling needs as they can. Yeah. Cool stuff. And so I'm wondering, SJs, what are some hobbies or interests that you have?
Well, for me, I can say that I like to learn foreign languages. That's a hobby that I have. Like, I'm learning French, Japanese. Probably I'll be learning German next year. That'll be seeing that future project. Yeah, I like to do exercises. That's basically these things.
I've learned a lot about Myers-Briggs and cognitive functions theory. I also like learning the basis of a lot of other different identifying programs that have nothing to do with cognitive functions. But I also, I'm an avid reader. I've read a lot of things. I am a people person, so spending time with people is huge for me. And then I also have an interest in low-tech regenerative farming and agriculture, which it kind of started as like disaster preppy stuff, but I don't have any money to invest in that, so I just started learning information instead. And then it kind of took instead of just if a disaster happened bent, it kind of went into if you actually had the farm bent, and I prefer something that is as low tech and as organic as possible, with minimal outside influences, outside chemicals, or if you are adding things, just things more like minerals, adding minerals to the program, and doing better on the preventative side rather than the corrective side of things. So I know this is very ESTJ, but one of the things they talk about, particularly if you have animals and you're trying to, like cows or sheep or anything that you keep for a long time, is the best way to get a great flock or herd is to practice very active culling of any traits that are not great. So if anything gets sick, you just get rid of it. That's apparently not one you want to keep and keep breeding. Like that one goes for hamburger, or that one gets sold to some other sucker that is willing to buy it, because you just don't have time to deal with taking care of animals that can't handle living on your property. Not that you aren't trying to improve your property, not that you aren't, giving them the good basics, give them good nutrition, give them good land and space and things like that. And water is definitely critically important in good fencing, but but principles in to do with all of that. And then a lot of other things that are like make things more efficient and more savings. So that there's a lot of planning that can be done in that sphere of, if you plan ahead, you could save yourself a ton of time. So I have collected all the different nuggets. Like it's one of those, people joke at this point, if I were to jump into the farming game, I'm probably like 2 years ahead in experience over somebody who's just starting, just because I've picked up enough of these tips because I went and studied it first, as opposed to jumping in first and doing it, which is odd for me because usually by personality I'd rather jump in first, but since I was out of money, I actually did this one the other way around. And I live in Arizona, which is a horrible place to try to farm or raise animals as a general rule. Like this is not the natural place to try to do all that kind of stuff. I live in the middle of a desert, a very hot desert.
Amy, that hobby sounds really fascinating. I really like the disaster preparedness aspect of that, just like as a type 6 and as an SJ. That appeals to me. I don't know if I could get as deep into that as you have, just because my ability to retain information is not as high maybe, but I really like that. I think that's super cool. So I obviously learning about typology, and that's been kind of like my longest running hobby throughout my life. So Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, Socionics, anything like that is really fascinating to me. I really like a lot of holistic health stuff, like meditation, nutrition, learning about things like that. What else? I like to read. I haven't had tons of time for that as much as I used to, but I love stories. I love reading, especially fiction. I like nonfiction too, but I tend to get bored of nonfiction after a while. But I really love stories. I love being pulled into the emotions of the people I'm reading about and learning about their lives and just gaining insights from the things that I read. And I like learning languages a little bit. I think it's really impressive, Samuel, that you've learned so many. I'm learning, I'm doing a couple on Duolingo right now, and I took about 6 years of Spanish between high school and college. And I really enjoyed it. I tend to pick up on languages fairly easily. What else? I've gotten into cooking recently. It's not something that I have tended to enjoy in the past, but I've kind of had to learn that skill to keep myself alive. But it's gotten more fun, I think, the more I do it. I like to do yoga and Pilates, kind of low impact exercises like that. That's it.
That gives a lot of perspective. How about Jane, Anaa? Yeah.
Well, of course, I'm also very interested in personality typology. I feel like throughout my life, I tend to I've gone through phases of things that I get just super interested in. They've ranged from gems and minerals, anatomy and physiology, and one it still persists. I'm interested in stuff about outer space. I just bought a bunch of books, including one about the ways the universe could end, which I'm really excited to read. So those kind of scientific interests have always been prominent. I also like spending time with friends, and I've picked up hiking kind of recently. I don't know. It's really, I mean, I've never been huge on exercise, so it's really nice to have something that is actually enjoyable and is physical activity. Like, because I don't know, I get really bored just like in a gym and stuff like that. And it's really nice to just see those gorgeous views from like the mountaintops. Speaking of gorgeous views, I'm also interested in photography. It's like kind of casual, I guess, but it's been something I've liked doing for years. And like I have a nice DSLR and I want to try to get into maybe trying portrait photography because I tend to just do a lot of like landscape stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of anything else right now. But yeah, those are things that I do.
That's really, really awesome, Jane. Also, send me some of your photos that you've taken too. I can add them into the video and then give them like a Jane montage.
Oh my god, that would be so cool. I could definitely send you pics.
Yay!
Aw.
I love how affirming the ISFJs are. Feel so loved. How about Anaa, your hobbies?
Well, it's so funny because you say hobbies, and I was like trying to think what I do because when you did the question, I was like, what do I do? Like, what do I do when I have like free time? But it's because since I told you before, I do theater, so most of the time I'm doing that. So that's something that I really, really love. I love acting. I love producing the plays, and we do a lot of community work. We go to different places to just take theater there, and I also love watching TV shows. I like to watch documentaries about like the brain, how the brain works, also about how movies are made. And I think I have seasons, like Jane and Natalie said, about specific things, and then I start like binge watching every podcast or every videos that I encounter on that topic. And I love watching videos about conspiracy theories and like also how people feel and how they think. I love to watch videos about personality in general, not only MBTI, but also about like how people perceive the world and how what they are the way they are. I love watching documentaries about athletes and like famous people and see what they do, how they're. So that's basically what I do.
I'd say I forgot 2 hobbies. I'm very religious, so I spend a lot of time with that, but I also sing a lot. So when I saw the background in Jeans that you've got a Wicked poster in your background, I was like, yes. So I do, I should say probably a lot of singing would also be a big part of my life. I've been in several productions and stuff like that over my life and sing routinely. So
Yo. Well, Amy, if you ever want to send me a video of you singing, I could add it as the outro. But if it's too embarrassing to, you don't have to. So.
Oh, me embarrassed? Not usually. Yeah, actually, it was funny. Last week was my birthday, and I was at a potluck for church, and our one of the new pastors on staff, he was in charge of it. He's like, so I heard it's your birthday. Is it okay if I have everybody sing you happy birthday? I'm like, oh, you sweet guy. You obviously don't know me very well. I am not the least bit shy. I'm like so totally massively extroverted. Yeah, no, it'll be great. And I told other people, they're like, he doesn't know you yet, does he?
That's funny. Yeah. It's nice to hear all of your interests. It also gives perspective because sometimes I notice the community will attribute certain hobbies to certain type category groups. So like if you like things about the brain or about holistic health or some other kind of abstract topic, people would assume they'd assume that, oh, you must be an intuitive because you like that hobby, which is totally not the case. So it's good to like kind of show people the range of hobbies and how if anyone has a bias towards certain hobbies being of a certain type, it helps clear that up.
Have you guys noticed that when you pick up a hobby, you tend to like to learn quite a bit of it before you like drop it? Like you want to know like usually a lot more than it seems like some of the people you know about what every couple of years with it or or couple books with it or whatever before you're like, oh, I'm not good. Like I've learned enough about this, or I found a new topic, but like I can't like start learning about something and like leave it alone then. Like I have to learn enough, a substantial amount of it first before I can leave it alone. Like I can do a recipe once, but if I decide I like the recipe, like I have to sit there and like, okay, I got to make it several times. And what was it I need to tweak to make this better? Like, because I've got only a couple of recipes that I'm really good at, but it's like, no, these are my really good recipes. And like, okay, well, I don't make that all that often, so I won't worry about tweaking it this time. But, like even macaroni and cheese now has a process because, I make that often enough for the kids.
I do kind of feel like I stick with interests maybe longer than certain people, maybe not as long as others, but I do tend to get very like obsessive about my interests. Like I'll try to learn everything I can. And sometimes it seems like, I don't know, like sometimes it seems like I'll stay with the same thing longer than like other people I know. Like maybe they'll get interested in it for a little while and then they'll be on to something else. But I feel like I have more, I don't know what it is. Like I like the familiarity of it, and I like continuing to add things onto something that's already familiar. And I'll make the same recipe a lot. Like I got into a pretty bad habit of like only eating the same things over and over, like over the past year, which is why I kind of tried to get into cooking a little bit more. But I realized like I was actually getting sick of eating the same things over and over. But it took me a really long time to actually realize, oh, this is why I'm not eating. Like I need to branch out. Yeah, I guess.
Good point, Natalie. And so you'll see with types with higher up NE or SE, they're going to be more quick to drop things. So with an ESTJ, they actually have extroverted intuition pretty high up. And so sometimes they might be quicker to drop something than an ISFJ who has extroverted intuition in the last slot. And so that's maybe a small tell too. If you have an NE or SE higher up, you're more likely to drop something quickly. Whereas if it's lower down, you're more likely to stick with something all the way to the end of that thing.
Well, I also know that like our predictor function is our SI. So if we don't give it enough facts, our SI feels incapable of making a prediction. So you have to learn enough about it to not just answer the preferred solution you want, but you have to learn enough about it that if the variables change, you still know what solution you want. And so that requires learning not just the ideal way of doing it. Like it's not just, oh, I went into the pantry and I had exactly the ingredients for my recipe, but it's like, oh, I went into the pantry and the flour's not there. Okay, do I have a flour substitute? Do I have I don't have white sugar. Will brown sugar work? Do I need to modify my recipe to do it some other way? Now, I understand that like cooking is not the best example for this, but like it feels that way with a lot of other things. Like when I play a game, especially if there's multiple ways to win, just because I figured out one way to win and I'm pretty good at winning that way, I really don't feel confident at winning the game until I can figure out, oh, wait, here are the other ways I can win. I know how to collect the pieces it takes to win the game the other way too, particularly in games where like, yeah, you have to get like, Catan, you have to get to 10 points, but you can get to 10 points either getting settlements, cities, cards, largest army, there are a couple different ways, longest road. Until I feel confident knowing that I can still get to the answer from other ways, even though I may have a preferred best way solution, if I'm handed a different deck or a different set of cards, I still know how to get there. And I don't feel confident until I know enough to say that I can still win the game, even if you change the hand I've been dealt.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I would just say that for me, it feels like a waste of time if I don't get to the very end of things. It's like if I just see a little bit, no, I need to go way beyond so that I know that the time that I spend will not be wasted.
I was gonna say, well, kind of related to what everyone has been saying, which is all very on point. Like, I think a thing about high SI users is like, I see we really like to kind of develop like a mastery over something, like a process or just like a way of doing things. And maybe people perceive us sometimes as like maybe like we only master one way to do something and we're like stuck in a rut in that way, which can happen. But I feel like we master things over time, and in that, like, we like to know how to tweak them. As to like maybe in like different situations, like kind of like the cooking example that Amy gave, like if something slightly changes, then like we know where to go from there. Or I don't know, just like constantly tweaking in little ways to know like all the different ways you could do something, but it's all kind of coming from the same original template.
Yeah, I see SI as, so you have all these past experiences or impressions of the past, and you're trying to like figure out which impression is the most favorable one out of these past experiences. And now that like you have that ideal past experience, that template for the most ideal thing that's happened before, you want to kind of sometimes recreate it because you're like, there are elements of this that is the top notch in your own subjective experience. And so SI users they recreate the things that have worked in the past because of that. It's like a type of homeostasis. The reason why they're recreating it, because there's a type of pickiness to SI, because if you know that that particular past experience was a little better than that past experience, then you're going to go like, well, we're going to recreate that template because that template was better than that template. And that's the epitome of some component of SI.
Yeah, I feel like the way that I learn is, I guess I could best contrast it with like high NE users, particularly like someone with high NE and TI, where like I feel like they can grasp the underlying structure and idea of something really quickly. And once they do that, they're comfortable moving on to the next thing. And I feel like for me, in order to really get to that point where I understand the structure and the like conceptual sort of framework behind something, I have to really like put in the work with all the details and learn step by step and sort of like build an understanding that way. So I guess it's just a difference in like learning style, or it's that I want to really understand whatever it is that I'm interested in, and in order to do that, I have to stay with it for a long time.
Yeah, we get more notion of scale with time. Like when I was at university, everything that I was seeing a new theory or a new concept, I was always trying to see how could I feel it and how could it be applied in the real world, so that when I was facing the real situation, I will know how to do. Once I had in probably ENTP professor, and he was explaining his experience in the like in the field. They were building a real road, and he said that he couldn't feel like the right point in which it was necessary to add water to the earth so that they could progress. If I was in that situation, I'll make sure that I knew way before I was that I knew the right point by really feeling it. Is more like notion of scale and degree and perspective. I feel that if I don't know that, I don't know enough.
Mm-hmm. Like Samuel said, there's an element of groundedness and preparation to SI. So it's like, now you know that that's going to be a potential obstacle. I want to prepare to make sure that I'm ready when that obstacle occurs. Because there's a predictive element to SI and NI. Both SI and NI predict in different ways. SI predicts through its past experiences or through the facts of reality. And NI predicts in this vaguer, abstract way. It's like there are these patterns beyond articulation sometimes that you can sense of the world. And I typically, on a whole, has a harder time explaining its thought process of arriving to a conclusion. So, and I will predict and go like, I don't really know why I know that, but I know that because I can explain the conclusion, but I have a hard time explaining the SI step by step of how I got there. Whereas like SI will predict, but it'll also tell you, it's more likely to tell you the step by step by how it got to that prediction. Like Samuel could tell you, oh, I know that water thing is going to happen. Like Samuel used that water example. Like he's like, that's why I predict this conclusion. And so SI is more grounded in his predictions. Plus, with his TE too, he's going to be able to TE explain it as well. But yeah, NI gets all the rep for prediction, but I really think SI has really good predictive capacity too, as long as it has something to compare it to in the past. So a quality of SI is comparing and matching. It's taking a past experience and it's comparing and matching it to the present moment. So it's like, all right, I have this deck of experiences. Which one matches what I'm dealing with right now or what I'm going to deal with? And so that's an element of introverted sensing. And because SI cares about stability and recreating stability, it's going to have a predictive element because it wants to predict when there's not going to be stability. It's like, all right, how can I use these deck of past experiences to create more stability in the future? Natalie provided the example during this panel about how she knows that sometimes people don't speak up when they have to go to take a break, but they want to, but they just don't say it. And so sometimes to create stability or security or to meet someone's needs in a predictable way, there's a certain type of predictability that comes from knowing how people used to deal with people. You know that in the past, people don't take their breaks even if they want to. So now you project that onto the future. So sometimes I think the not looking into the future element is heavily overplayed for the SJs. I feel like if SJs truly care about security, they also think a little bit ahead too, because to maintain security, you have to have some sort of foresight. But maybe they don't look as forward as an NI user. They're not as future oriented as an NI user would be. But I would still argue that there's some sort of future element to SI, because if you want to create stability and structure or maintain and be dutiful or to do things the right way, you really actually have to have some long-term focus, even if it's not like NI long-term focus. So that's my rant. I think SI and NI do have some sort of long-term orientation because it's looking at how do I maintain security, or how do I maintain predictability, or how do I maintain the good parts of the situation over time? So yeah, sorry, rant over. But let me know if I'm wrong. I'd love to know. Amy is coming back. All right.
Sorry about that. I had a request. I knew my power was going down, but I didn't expect it to like drop off the edge of the earth all of a sudden.
Welcome back, Amy.
Sorry.
No worries, it happens.
And I'll check your rant in a little bit and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was ranting about how NI has all the credit for being future oriented, but I think SI has a little bit of future orientedness to it as well. Because if you want to create stability and security over time, you actually have to think about it over time. Like, so there is a future element to SI, maybe in a different way than NI does it. But I would argue that to be a stabilizer, to be a person who takes care of others, you actually do have to think a little bit ahead to take care of people's needs. Otherwise, if you're only thinking about their present needs, is that really taking care of their needs long term?
Honestly, it's frustrating if all you're doing is responding to their needs. Like, you have to, if you're not prepared ahead of time and you knew this was going to happen the second time, then it's just like, why didn't I remember? This has happened before. It's going to happen again. Why didn't I remember and make a plan ahead of time? Why did I get caught again?
The very notion of preparing insinuates that you thought about the future, because you'd have to think about the future to prepare for something. Yeah, so I don't know. I have a rant about how SI is too talked about as being just focus on the present, because I think there's some element of future focus to it, even if it's not NI future focus.
I see that most of the time the problem is that that the focus is on what we cannot do or don't tend to do, and not on the things that we are good at. That's just the problem, because usually intuition thinks about things usually about in a larger scale. Just because we're thinking in a different scale doesn't mean it's not relevant. For me, just a more problem of focus and ways of how they express the functions.
I agree, Samuel. I'd like to run by a hypothesis before we close the panel. I want to see if you guys agree or disagree with it. So I do find there are some SJs who do think about the future, but when they do think about the future, it tends to be within the scope of their lives. So it's like me and my family, or me and my life, or the community around you. So the local community around you. The scope is a little different in terms of long term. So it's like you might care about the overall scale, but I find the majority of the thoughts are around how can you preserve and maintain the situation around you, mostly. And so NI, it also thinks about the future too, but I find it thinks a little bit more on a broader scale. Like it might also think about me and my life too, but I find NI is also like thinking about the totality of everything, not in any sense, like it's not like all the possibilities, but it's like what are the probabilities for the future of humanity on a large scale. So it's more thinking about in an abstract way, like the abstraction of the human race projected forward across time, and how that plays out across time. And so yeah, it's just when I've had one-on-one chats with SJs, that's held up. I find that some of them plan for the future long term, but it tends to be within the scope of their local community or who they care about locally. Whereas with NJs, I notice when I've talked to NJs, they'll tell me about how when they think about the future, they think about all the implications of the future and the consequences of the future, but on the broad scope of humanity, like a larger scale. And so I don't know if that's true or that's false, but maybe we can confirm or deny.
I would say that's true. I don't think I could think that broadly unless I thought that I had already taken care of my immediate family and community. Like my immediate family and community needs are so at the forefront of what I think about all the time that trying to think on that level of scale without thinking about what I'm currently doing would be a bit difficult. Like, I do think on that scale because I'm religious, and I don't talk about trying to show my religion on this platform for a reason, because it's not the place nor the time for that. But when we talk about like having missionaries, in fact, we're doing missions conference for this week, which inherently, if you're talking about a missions conference, doesn't matter whether it's your business missions conference, like you're meeting as a business to create your 10-15 year business plan, that's equivalent to what we're doing right now. You are thinking broad and you're thinking big scope, and when we talk about, hey, can we send people to go do these things and to, do this, go this place in the world, go that place in the world, affect change more than just our local community. But even when we're talking about that, I have a hard time grasping other communities outside my own unless I personally know the people who are personally affecting those communities. Like, you can talk about the plight of other countries. Like Myanmar has gone through terrible troubles in the last year as a country. There's been massive rebellion. Armies have come in, slaughtered towns and villages, killed lots of people. That's nothing you could find that on any news media thing if you actually looked it up. But we are a little bit more connected to it because we know of people who share our faith who are in those communities who have died. were just telling us yesterday, we had like, they knew of like 130 people we knew had known who had died and left behind widows and children. And not to mention, that was just pastors, not to mention like widows, like their wives and children, not to mention other people in churches who had died, you know, lots of these things. And honestly, they talk about Myanmar, and I can read about a struggle like that, and I can feel just horrible that it's happening. But unless I get those personal stories from other people I personally know, it's hard to make it real. So listening to somebody yesterday who more personally knows those people makes that bigger impact, broader feeling come to life in a way that it's like that physical example I need to learn to actually have somebody I know that's actually connected. Like, I don't, like, you know, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I can't handle 6 degrees. I need like 3. You, me, to one person I know, to the person I don't know. Like, trying to think beyond that is just so difficult for me. It's a nice concept, and I can feel sad, and I can want to do things, and I will try to do my part, but it's just very conceptually difficult, especially when you consider the fact that there's lots of people here near me that I don't know who are probably in the same boat as some of those people that are farther away. And so I have a tendency to go, okay, that's important. And then I bring it back to, okay, here, what can I do here to meet somebody here that I don't know that has the same problem that I could help with?
Fascinating, Amy. How about everyone else?
Well, I think it's easier for me to think about like short-term future than long-term, because I need to, I don't know, I think that I can make a decision for sure about the future. And while you talk about stability and like security, you need to predict about future and see the pattern and all that. But for me personally, it's really hard to think about like the long future, because I don't know what information I'm gonna have in like years or like in 1 minute. So sometimes that's hard for me, and I prefer to take a decision maybe short term in the future, and then adapt if I have to, or take another decision or reevaluate if I have to do it, instead of just predicting or taking a decision like general aspect or more in an abstract way. I it's really hard for me to do that because I need information, and I know that's changing all the time. So I rather just wait before I take a decision, or just go little by little. That would be my experience with that.
Everyone else?
I definitely feel like it's easier for me to think about short-term future. Just like the practical things that I need to get done on a daily basis to ensure that I am happy and stay alive, like cooking up food for myself, doing my laundry, like making sure that practical things are in place so that I have the smoothest possible experience in my day-to-day life. I guess like I do think about longer term things in regards to my own life, like what do I want my career to look like what do I want my life to look like, 10 or 20 years from now. It definitely gets harder the further out I go. And then if I try to think about things like on a very big scale, like a global scale, I will actually this was part of the reason why I think being on Twitter got really overwhelming for me, because people are talking about those things a lot, and how, Western civilization might end, and all of these things. It's I get so stressed if I try to think about that, because there's absolutely nothing that I can do about it right now. And I really thrive on having something actionable that I can do in the moment to make things better. And I feel like if I try to think conceptually like that, some people I think just think about that stuff because it's interesting to them. But practically speaking, there's nothing I can do about it. So it really just I can start to get kind of panicky about it in a way. And then I'm oh, I have to stop thinking about this because I can't do anything. So yeah, definitely shorter term is easier for me.
Jane and Samuel?
Yeah, I definitely hard relate with that. Yeah, I I feel like I am like generally conscious of the future, but it probably is more of like short-term thinking, and I guess it is probably more about like my life and the I guess just kind of the world that I deal with, because it is what I could actually kind of prepare for. But like also it is, like Natalie said, it's very relevant, like people on Twitter and just kind of in the general sphere. Like I feel like there is I actually feel like a lot of people I know are kind of having just like this heightened like anxiety about certain things, like, you know, the climate crisis, obviously. Like, and I mean, that is something, of course, we do need to take more action now. And I think people aren't really realizing that enough, but just to show the general pattern, I guess, of like those really long-term issues, it can get very stressful, especially when it's at such a large scale thing like that. Or even like a lot of potential future issues like that. I feel like it can also get overwhelming because not just because it's so far out, but it's also like, oh, well, I could do something, but so many people on the earth need to also contribute. Like, even if I do my part, it feels kind of helpless. And like, I don't know. And now I'm just like really stressed out. And yeah, I don't know. I think when I try to think about the future, honestly, even more than just a couple years out, it like certain things are exciting, but it's definitely more of kind of a stressful experience for me, because it ultimately it all kind of comes back to, well, I don't know. Like I don't know for sure. Like things could be different. Like anything could really change at any point. Technically, like your whole life could be changed in an instant. So I don't know. It's just like a lot to think about, and I feel like I can't. There's only so much I could really do. So I guess I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Yeah.
I would also hazard to say that it's harder for SJs right now to make long-term plans than sometimes other periods in history. Technology is changing so fast. Culture has changed so fast. And it just keeps changing faster and faster. You almost feel like you're in a whipsaw, like right now, on some topics. And when things are whipsawing back and forth, it's very difficult for us to create the routines so that we can put enough stuff on the back burner to have those conversations. And so I think if you were in a time period that felt more stable, without as many changes in it, we would feel probably calmer and more able to make a long-term prediction. Like I like my routines and I make my routines, but I'm also full well knowing I have children who are 9, 7, almost 5, and 1.5. In 3 years, I'm going to have a very different age set of children, which means some of the routines I'm using right now I won't be using then. Like I've been getting rid of my baby stuff, in the last year for the first time in, 7 years. And so that's like a change in routine that I've been dealing with. And while I can make these changes in routine and I can create new routines to adjust for those, the faster things change, the more time I have to spend changing the routines to match, the less time I have to deal with those plans.
That's really enlightening. The reason why I brought up this topic was because like I have a friend, his name is Ryan. He's an ISTJ. He owns the website Practical Typing. And I had a conversation with him that changed my view of how SI is described. And he told me, Joyce, I have a 25-year plan, but it's for his own life. He's like, I wanted this job when I was that age, and I wanted this type of future for myself. And then it shattered my view of, how people talk about ISTJs only thinking about the immediate future. Because I'm like, wow, he does have a type of trajectory he sees his life on, but it's just his life, and he's just planning for his own life. And that shifted how I viewed SI, because I'm like, well, maybe there are some SJs who do plan ahead, but it's just for their immediate life.
Well, and I think some planning ahead, we wouldn't realize we were doing it because it's become a routine.
Yeah.
Like we don't, like things that are really routine for us, we don't think of as future planning anymore. We think of that as being a done topic we can set aside. So like, you know, in 25 years, where do I see myself? Still married to my husband, still interacting with my, hopefully, you know, starting to have grandchildren, you know, still in my same religious practices. You know, I may not be in this house anymore. I may be at a different church, but I'm still in church. You know, there's probably a lot of things, you know, really, if other people are stopping to talk to me, I would say, oh yeah, I actually do have 25-year, 50, even 50-year plans from now. But for me, those plans go into the unconscious mode because they've got a routine. Like they go in the settled zone. Like I don't have to think about them anymore because I already have the plans. They're back there. I'll dig them out when they change. You know, like you know those old jokes of the guy who's been married for, you know, 50 years, and his wife goes, how come you never told me you love me? He goes, well, I told you I loved you at our wedding, and I'll tell you if it ever changes. You know, it's like, well, sometimes our long-term plans feel like that. You know, it's like, oh, well, I have a long-term, you know, my long-term plan is I take care of my hygiene, you know, like that, you know, like that is my long-term plan. Why would I stop? You know, I might change what time of day I do my hygiene because my jobs change. Maybe I switch to seconds or midnights, or I start a weird job, but that doesn't mean like there are certain parts of it that wouldn't change. You know, it might change time of day, but that doesn't really make it a change. It's an adjustable change, but we long-term plans are always put on the back burner, I think, once we have an answer for them. And since we're not really comfortable with things that we don't have an answer for, we either are frantically finding answers for them or we're avoiding them, like the plague.
Really well said.
We're comfortable with unknowns. Like unknowns can either be unknowns and we're just going to leave that alone in the unknown character, or it's going to be something that we're going to take it out of the unknown and we're going to know it, because that's what makes us comfortable. It either has to be one or the other. It's kind of black and white for us that way.
Yeah, that's what's always like, that's where I've always had cognitive dissonance. I'm like, if STJs never plan for the future, then you have actually a lot of unknowns for the future then, because you have to have some sort of idea of the future to make it a known. But that means you still thought about the future if you made it a known. Does that make sense? That's how my brain works logically, and I'm like, huh. I think it's more likely for STJs to think more into the future because they have TE. TE is all about planning. And so, but it's not going to be like a grand changing future plan typically. It's more like, how do I maintain?
In the sense of like my life, while revolved around people, is also revolved around the plans for people. Where Anna's life is revolved around people, but it's revolved around the emotions for people. Her 25 and 50-year plan is likely to be, hey, I'm still, you know, a happy person who's happily helping other people, and the people around me are happy. That is her 25 and 50-year plan. But because colloquially, we don't think of 25 and 50-year plans as, hey, I'm still solving problems, or hey, I'm still making people happy. It doesn't come across. It's kind of like the classic bad MBTI test question of, hey, do you use your imagination, or are you totally like practical? Like, yeah, I use my imagination. Like, what, like, I do, but I don't. But it's not until you get into type that we sit back and we realize, oh, you mean you use your imagination like they're using their imagination, that thing over there, and then you're like, oh yeah, no, I don't do that. You know. So I think when you say long-term planning, you have to go back into the weeds and say, okay, what kind of long-term planning are you talking about? And if you start describing maybe an SJ's definition of a long-term plan, which is something that's in the routine or known and, you know, and it's on the back burner, then you realize, oh wait, that's my long-term plan. Yeah. And that would be another way to find an SJ as opposed to a different type is, okay, what's your definition of long-term plan? I don't have one. No, you do. Let's just figure out what yours are. Your long-term plan is. Your long-term plan is either I'm not going to bother with it, or I know something, but it's, you know, it's settled, so I don't really think about it right now. I'll pull out that emergency plan when it comes.
Yeah, I think that's why we also come across that we only think about the present, because as Amy said, we already know that we want to be happy, or I have like something settled for the future. So I only concentrate or put my energy until in the future, because I already know what my final goal is. So I don't have to worry about that. But maybe I won't be able to tell you like, oh, I want to have, I don't know, this specific job in 3 years or in 4 or 5, because at least for me, I don't know if that's possible. If that's a possibility, maybe I can like dream it or say that I wanted to, but I think that's the main difference. We at least I focus more on feelings and emotions and how I want to feel and what how I want the people around me to be and like feel, and then the rest is just like present stuff that I have to do every day. So
Interesting. Maybe there's a quality to general sensing that's more in the present. So, SP types are told to be the most in the present type, but maybe with the SJ types, they have their routines set, and so they're kind of more in the present because...
Yeah, I think that's the way you can tell the difference between an SP and an SJ, is we are here in the present, but it's because we've already predicted enough of this other stuff, routinized it, that we can go forward. I think easier way to tell the difference between us is throw us in a completely new situation that we can't connect to something previous, and watch what happens. That's the way to tell the difference between an SJ or SP, or for an SP, ask them to do the same thing the same way every single time just because we said so, and watch them do the same freak out we would do with a totally new situation.
That's really concisely put.
I think that's one of the ways you could probably really tell the differences between us is just simply that, we're both present. Like one of the illustrations I used to do a long time ago for the difference between SP and SJ is someone goes and gets a haircut or goes and gets her hair colored. Any sensor is going to recognize it happened. Intuitives may not, but any sensor is going to recognize that the cut or color happened. The difference is an SP is going to realize something in the room is different, and then they'll zero in on the haircut and color. For us, we'll walk in and we'll realize, oh, that is not as it was before. Like it's coming from a different, like SP notices, like they don't know why the room feels different, and then they go looking and they're able to zone in why it looks different. And for us, we walk into a room and we look in and go, oh, this is not where it was before. And that's how we know it's different. And so I think we're both equally present. We're just maybe dealing with different topics of presentness in what we're doing right now. And I also think SPs are a little bit more, when they're planning, they plan nebulous future because they use NI. When we plan, we use concrete past because we use SI. So our planning styles are inherently different because of the functions we use. And I think there would probably be a correlation between how we use NE to generate possibilities compared to the way they use SE to generate possibilities. But that's not really helpful for this conversation at the moment. So
those are grand spanking awesome differentiations between SJs and SPs, Amy, because I don't want to like overuse everyone's time or abuse everyone's time. I'm just going to ask Samuel what his thoughts are on the whole conversation, then we'll wrap up.
Great. Well, what I believe that touches a little bit what Jane said is more about, because there are what I really can do to change things. So I think that generally intuition sees more about the current of events. But for me, I have more information about how these steps can change my future and influence my future than my placement within the currency of events, how things play out. So as I have more power to decide what things will happen within my life, I'll generally care more about the span of my life, where the if I had the job or the opportunity to have to solve problems for longer periods of time, for example, if I was a CEO, it was necessary, my actions will have a consequence based on the current of things, current of events. So then I'll see that current as more important than just my lifetime. The placements is hardly to see the placement within how things move that will really impact how things will play out. But I do recognize it's very important to know.
That's really well said. Here are some final thoughts to wrap it up. I think NI-FI together, it tends to aim for its personal goals. And so people typically see NI as, oh, they just care about me and my life. And because the F, but it's because they only take the NTJ perspective of it. And NTJs or even SFPs, like they think about goals and more in terms of long-term their own life. But I've noticed that it's more intricate and nuanced, and so I'm trying to shine a light on it. I'm not sure if it's working or not, because I think that a lot of sensing types, whenever I talk to them, they'll describe the way that they look at things as more as me and my life too. So FI, introverted feeling in general, can cause the me and my life approach to planning, but also just generally being a sensor can also deal more within the scope of their local scope or their own life. So, FE is going to care more about the people around them, of course, and their feelings and the group around them, but it's still local. Like, to me, it still counts as a local consideration. So those things can look similar, but I find or maybe this is just my experience. So I'll explain how I see the future. So this is just like a subsection of INFJ seeing future and NI. I know other INFJs might experience the future differently, so I don't mean to generalize at all. But how I experience NI, this is just one variation of NI, is that when I see the future, I see it long term to the end. Ever since I was a kid, I envisioned how it would be like to die. And so I was like, what would my life seem throughout its entire trajectory forever? And so I'm looking at eternal consequences of all time. And it's not extroverted intuition because I'm not seeing possibilities of it. I'm seeing one future. This is the one future and how it's going to project throughout all time. And so that's how I experience the future. And I always, with everything, I'll see one event and I'll see the long-term implication and consequences of it projected to its very end consequence. But it's not NE because it's not possibilities. It's literally seeing one future all the way through.
Joyce, I have a question. But you see the consequence at the very end. So the problem is at the end of your life, basically. Because for me, what I tend to see, I not necessarily want to have a good future, but I want to build a good past, so that when I'm very old and I'm about to die, I can look at my life back then and see that every step or every moment, or at least most of it, was filled with intention, and I tried to do my best, but I was seeing my life as the process, not the point of the end. You think more about the point of the end?
Yeah, I think about the end of everything. It's not NE because it's not generating multiple possibilities. I see one clear vision for how one action in the present becomes this clear vision of this thing.
I think being NE users, we can't predict one clear vision. We can see one clear past. SI allows you to see one clear past very easily. So a lot of people, sometimes they talk to us and I almost get a feeling like they don't know what their past was. Or they're not sure how to interpret their past. And I look at them and go, that's hard for me to grasp because I have one past, but I have multiple futures available to me. I have my preferred future, that I would prefer, but I have multiple futures available. And I think for you guys, it's the reverse. You see one future, sometimes multiple pasts to it in one sense, and we see one past, multiple futures.
That is so smart, Amy. 10 out of 10. You get all the cake or all the whatever food that you like. Wow. Okay. So thank you everyone for coming out and spending so much time with me. Some good old-fashioned quality time. It means a lot to hear about your SJ experiences, creating stability or creating these type of routines that are reliable, predictable, consistent, dutiful, and that you're able to take a template and to maximize the potential of that template, recreate that template and bring back the past for the world. All the good parts that stuck out to you, and bring out that and bring it towards the world. So there's this ability to caretake for people because you're able to recreate the things that have happened before that stuck out to you as positive and bring it back. And so you offer this incredible ability to practically take care of those around you. And the world is better off for that. It needs that groundedness. It needs that anchor. And you all provide a steady anchor for the world to rest upon. Otherwise, we would be in chaos. So you bring order to the chaos. And so thank you, Amy, for your ability to accurately put into clarity the differentiations between the types and also how to differentiate categories within types. It shows how nerdy you've been about type. and now you're able to bring wisdom to people because of your love of type results in ability to teach people how to understand type in more concise and clear ways. So you make a good teacher of type. And Anaa, you have this really bubbly energy to you that's very warm, it's very friendly, very considerate, very loving. You have a loving voice. Like I can hear through your tone of voice that you love and care for people and that you want to provide for them and that you want to consider them in your decisions. There's a caring quality just to listen to how you speak. It's so engaging, it's so friendly, it's so melodic. I enjoyed that. It makes for good theater and it makes you a good teacher too.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jane, I really liked when you called ISFJs subtle sunshine. And I was like, yeah, you got that spot on, that warm, inviting quality of ISFJs. You summed it up there. There is a subtle sunshine, a radiant glow to both you, Jane, and Natalie. And it's a sweetness, a subtle sweetness, the sweeteners of society. Cool. And Natalie, it's really rad how you like holistic health. That shows a focus on really interesting topics. And you're also able to provide down-to-earth examples. And it's cool how you care about your coworkers because you make sure that they take breaks. That's loving, that's nurturing, that's very wholesome.
Thank you.
Yay. And Samuel, you have this focus on languages, and I'm like, yeah, Samuel, if I ever need a translator or someone who can speak multiple languages, you're gonna go to Samuel, my boy. He knows how to speak all of these cool different languages, which is gonna come in really handy in the future. It opens up so many job opportunities. It opens up so many doors. And so smart TE move to learn all of those things because it helps with your career trajectory. And I oftentimes have TJs on panels and they'll talk about work and it sounds like they like working, and that makes me really happy that someone enjoys working in the world. And I'm like so yeah, thank you everyone for coming out. Amy's daughter is adorable. And so I'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye.
ISFJs. What are those? Is that like the less cool version of INFJ?
kind of shallow, likes to clean, robotic, 50s housewife vibes. You know what? Ain't nobody gonna make a cool rap for ISFJs, so I made one myself. Check this out. Prepare to cringe. Dust, dust, sweep, sweep. Intuitives look at my home and weep. I'm a closet, closet, freak, freak. Tap this NE and we can go deep. I'm an ISFJ, yeah, never been late. A day in my life, I see it as my fate to carry out my traditions, even if it's just my own little rituals, like taking all the crust off my bread when I make a PB&J, or texting all my friends on their birthdays. I never forget what's important to me. So careful what you say, I'll play that shit on repeat every day, for the rest of my life. Catch me zoning out when I see a butterfly, and it reminds me of the time that you told me I reminded you of a butterfly, and now I'm super far behind you, 'cause my demons are on blast, as are angels from the past. Good luck finding me inside my mind when I'm tripping on time. Snap back to the present, 'cause I got responsibilities, but sometimes I wonder if that butterfly is really me. But nah, I think I'd remember that experience, but maybe all my memory is pre-programmed machinery. Is anything real at all? Is this a simulation? Do I have free will, or am I just a speculation in the mind of a deity? What rhymes with deity? I don't know. Let's cut this. This is getting weird. Alright, let's try something else. I just want to take care of you, homie G. So put your coat on before you leave. I just want to take care of you, sweetie pie. So let me comfort you while you cry. That's so lame. That's so lame. We gotta try something else. Just a second. Alright, how about this? Everybody says sensors aren't deep, that we can't get philosophical. Shout out to Jungian, who I referenced earlier unintentionally. Getting to the point, I promise. What I really mean is that I hold my own on the intuitive scene. INFJ's got nothing on me. Just kidding. You guys are way cooler than I try to be. What I really want to say is that all I want to do is make you feel comfortable, then squeeze your secrets out of you. I'm trying really hard here, but I'm tanking pretty fast. My wordsmithing abilities would not get me past a Sphinx or a killer or an ENTP, but the last one on the list should definitely kill me. I mean, call me. Yeah. I'm really good at keeping track of everything they lose, on top of all the laundry and the cooking and the dues that we pay to society, whatever the heck that means. Maybe in return they can help me with my rhyme scheme. Alright. Gotta take this to another level. You ready? I'm an SEI and I keep it real fly. Don't hang with me unless you want good vibes. Get high, roasting marshmallows over the fire. All the good food and conversation your heart desires. Don't scream at me, I'm sensitive, my ears will bleed. But a friendly debate, that's what I need. Yeah, sign me up. ILE's on the block, got 'em lining up. They see me dealing all the cookies and the cozy hugs. Got that mobilizing L and suggestive I. I can be analytical when I try. That's not what I do best, or I would be bluffing. They don't call me master of hygge for nothing. I'll put you in a food coma, tuck you in tight, rearrange all your furniture overnight. Wake up, you'll be in paradise, and that's the work of an SEI. That's a wrap.